All right. We're all set to fly because it could be long tonight. And if I say that, that means big trouble.
45 minutes.
You're joking.
No, it could be long tonight. All right. We're at page 85. One scene in Act 5 is all there is.
Oh, thank you.
I'll start it off and pass it to Jerry. 85. All right. My very worthy cousin fairly met, and our old and faithful friend, we are glad to see you.
Happy return be to your royal grace.
Many and hearty thankings to you both.
Stop!
Many and hearty thankings to you both. We have made inquiry of you, and we hear such goodness of your justice that our soul cannot but yield you forth public thanks for running more requital.
We make our bonds still greater.
For your desert speaks loud, and I should wrong it, to lock it in the wars of covered bosom. What it deserves in the character of brass, afforded residence against the tooth of time, and brazier of oblivion. Give me your hand, and let the subjects see, to make them know that outward courtesies would fain proclaim favors they keep within. Come, escorts, you must walk by us on our other hand, and good supporters are you.
How is your time? Loud and yield before it.
Justice, O royal Duke, veil your regard upon a wrong. I would fain have said, nay, O worthy prince, dishonor not your eye by throwing it on any other object, till you've heard me in my true complaint, and given me justice, 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 justice.
Relate your wrongs. In what? By whom? Be brief. Here is Lord Angelo shall give you justice. Reveal yourself to him.
O worthy Duke, you bid me seek redemption of the devil. Hear me yourself, for that which I must speak must either punish me, not being believed, or wring redress from you. Hear me, or hear me here.
My lord, her wits, I fear me, are not firm. She hath been a suitor to me for her brother, cut off by course of justice.
By course of justice.
And she will speak most bitterly and strange.
Most strange, but yet most truly will I speak. That Angelo's form is it not strange? That Angelo's murder, is it not strange? That Angelo's thoughtless thief, and hypocrite, virgin violator, is it not strange and strange?
Nay, it is 10 times strange.
It's not true he is Angelo. Then this is all as true as it is strange. Nay, it is 10 times true, for truth is truth. The end of reckoning.
Away with her, poor soul. She speaks this in the infirmity of sin.
Prince, I conjure thee, if thou believest there is another comfort than this world, thou neglect me not with that opinion that I am touched with madness. Make not impossible that which seemeth but unlike. It is not impossible that one, the wickedest Kate upon the ground, may seem as shy, as brave, as just, as absolute as Angelo. Even so may Angelo, with all his dressing, correct, titles, forms, be an art-filled villain. Leave it, royal prince. He be less, he's nothing. He's more, and I more name for badness.
For mine honesty, if she be mad, as I believe no other, her madness hath the oddest brainless sense. Such a dependency on thing, as e'er I heard in madness.
O gracious Duke, harp not on that, nor do banish reason for inequality, but let your reason serve to make the truth appear where it seems hid, and hid the false seem true.
Many that are not mad have, sure, no lack of reason. What would you say?
I am the sister of one Claudio, condemned upon the act of fornication to lose his head, condemned by Angelo. I, in probation of a sisterhood, was sent to by my brother, one Lucio, as then the messenger.
That's I, and slight your grace, I came to her from Claudio and desired her to try her gracious fortune with Lord Angelo for her poor brother's pardon.
That's he indeed.
You are not fit to speak.
No, my good lord, I wish to hold my peace.
I wish you now, then, pray you, take note of it, and when you have the business of yourself, pray heaven, you then be perfect.
I warrant Your Honor.
Mark, you're up.
Warrants for yourself. Take heed to it.
This gentleman told somewhat of my tale.
Right.
It may be right, but you are in the wrong to speak before your time. Proceed.
I went to this pernicious Catholic deputy.
That's somewhat madly spoken.
The phrase is to the matter. Oh, pardon it. The phrase is to the matter.
Amend it again. The matter. Proceed.
In brief, let the needless process lie. How I persuaded, how I prayed and healed, how he repelled me, and how I replied. For this was of much length, of ill conclusion. I now begin with grief and shame to utter. He would not, but by gift of my chaste body, to his
Concupiscible.
concupiscible, intemperate lust, release my brother. And after much debate, my sisterly remorse confused mine honor. And I did yield to him, but the next morn betimes his purpose served him, and the warrant my brother's poor brother's death.
This is most likely.
Oh, that it were as like as it is true.
By heaven, wretch, thou knowest not which thou speakst, or else thou art suborned against his honor in hateful practice. First, his integrity stands without blemish. Next, it imports no reason that with such vehemency he should pursue faults proper to himself. If he had so offended, he would have weighed thy brother by himself, and not have cut him off. Someone hath set you on. That's the truth. Say by whose advice thou camest here to complain.
And is this all? Then, oh, you blessed ministers above, keep me in patience, and with ripened time unfold the evil which is here wrapped up in countenance. Heaven shield your grace from woe, as I thus wrong hence unbelief go.
I knew you'd fain be gone, an officer, to prison with her. Shall we thus permit a blasting and a scandalous threat to fall on him so near us? This needs must be a practice. Who knew of your intent in coming hither?
One I would were here, Friar Roderick.
A ghostly father belike. Who knows that Lodowick?
My lord, I know him. 'Tis a meddling friar. I do not like the man. Had he been lay, my lord, for certain words he spake against your grace in your retirement, I had swinged him soundly.
Words against me? This is a good friar, belike. To set on this wretched woman here against our substitute, let this friar be found.
Yesternight, my lord chief and that friar, I saw them at the prison. Saucy friar, a very screwed fellow.
Blessed be your royal grace. I have stood by, my lord, and I have heard your royal ear abused. First, hath this woman most wrongfully abused your substitute, who is as free from touch or soil with her as she from one ungot.
We did believe no less, knowing that Friar Roderick, which is decent.
I know him for a man divine and holy, not scurvy, nor a temporary meddler, and he's reported by this gentleman and on my trust, a man that never yet did, as he vouches, misreport your grace.
My Lord, most villainously, believe it.
Well, he in time may come to clear himself, but at this instant he is sick, my lord, of a strange fever. Upon his mere request, being come to knowledge that there was a complaint intended against Lord Angelo, came I hither to speak as from his mouth. What he doth know is true and false, and what he with his oath and all probation will make up full clear, whensoever he's covenanted, first for this woman to justify this worthy nobleman, so vulgarly and personally accused. Her shall you hear disproved to her eyes, till she herself confess it.
Good friar, let's hear it. Do you not smile at this, Lord Angelo? O heaven, the vanity of wretched fools. Give us some seats. Come, cousin Angelo. In this I'll be impartial. Be you judge. Of your own cause. Is this the witness, friar? First let her show her face, and after speak.
Pardon me, my lord. I will not show my face until my husband bid me.
What? Are you married?
No, my lord.
Are you a maid?
Oh, my Lord.
A widow then?
Neither, my lord.
Why, you are nothing then, neither maid, widow, nor wife.
My Lord, she may be a monk, or any of them are neither maid, widow, nor wife.
Silence that fellow. I would he had some cause to prattle for himself.
Well, my lord?
My lord, I do confess I ne'er was married, and I confess besides I am no maid. I have known my husband, yet my husband knows not that ever he knew me.
You let it up.
Oh, I'm trying to figure it out. I was going, he was drunk then, my lord. It can be no better.
For the benefit of silence, would thou wert so too.
Well, my lord,
This is no witness to the Lord.
Now it comes to it, my lord, so she that accuses him of fornication, in self-same manner doth accuse my husband, and charges him, my lord, with such a time, when I'll dispose, I had him in mine arms, with all the effect of love.
Charges she more than me?
Not that I know.
No, you see your husband?
Why, just my lord, and that is Angelo, who thinks he knows that he ne'er knew my body, but knows he thinks that he knows Isabel's.
This is a strange abuse. Let's see thy face.
My husband bids me, now I will unmask. This is that face, thou poor Angelo, which once thou swast was worth the looking on. This is the hand which, with a vowed contract, was fast locked in mine. This is the body that took away the match from Isabel, and did supply thee at thy garden house in her imagined person.
Know you this woman?
Carnally, she says.
sirrah, no more.
Enough, my lord.
My lord, I must confess I know this woman, and 5 years since there was some speech of marriage betwixt myself and her, which was broke off, partly for that her promised proportions came short of composition, but in chief for that her reputation was disvalued and levity, since which time of 5 years I never spake with her, saw her, nor heard from her, upon my faith and honor.
Noble prince, as there comes light from heaven and words from bread, as there is sense in truth and truth in virtue, I am affianced to this man's wife, as strongly as words could make up vows. And my good lord, for Tuesday night last gone, in his garden's house, he knew me as a wife. This is true. Let me in safety raise me from my knees, or else forever be fixed here, a marble monument.
I did but smile till now. Now, good my lord, give me the scope of justice. My patience here is touched. I do perceive he's poor and formal. Women are no more but instruments of some more mightier member that sets them on. Let me have way, my lord. Find this practice out.
I, with my heart, punish them to the height of your pleasure. A foolish friar and a pernicious woman, act with her that's gone, thinkest thou thy oaths? They would swear them down each particular saint for testimonies against his worth and credit, that seal and approbation. You, Lord Aeschylus, sit with thy cousin, lend him your kind pains to find out this abuse, whence 'tis derived. There is another friar that set them on, let him be sent for.
Would he were here, my lord, for he indeed hath set the woman on to this complaint. Your provost knows the place where he abides, and he may fetch him.
Go do it instantly. And you, my noble and well-warranted cousin, whom it concerns to hear this matter forth, do with your injuries as seems you best. In any chastisement, I for a while will leave you, but stir not you till you have well determined upon these slanders.
My lord will do it thoroughly. Signor Lucio, did not you say you knew the Friar Lodowick to be a dishonest person?
Honest in nothing but his clothes, and one that hath spoke most villainous speeches of the Duke.
We shall entreat you to abide here till he come and enforce them against him. You shall find this friar a notable fellow.
As any in Vienna, upon my word.
Oh, it's St. Isabel here once again. I would speak with her. Pray you, my lord, give me leave to question. You shall see how I will handle her.
Not better than he by her own report.
Say you?
Very, sir, I think. If you handled her privately, she would sooner confess. Perchance, publicly, she'd be ashamed.
I will go darkly to work with her.
That's the way, for women are light at midnight.
Come on, mistress. Here's a gentlewoman, denies all that you have said.
My lord, here comes the rascal I spoke of, here with the provost.
In very good time, speak not you to him till we call upon him.
Come, sir. Did you set these women on to slander Lord Angelo? They have confessed you did.
Tis false.
How know you where? How know you where you are?
Respect your great place, and let the devil be sometimes afraid for his burning home. Where is the Duke? Since he should hear me speak.
The Duke sent us, and we will hear you speak. Hope you speak justly.
Boldly, at least. O poor souls, come you to seek the lamb here of the fox? Fight to your redress. Is the Duke gone? And is your cause gone too? The Duke's unjust, thus to retort your manifest appeal, and put your trial in the villain's mouth, which here you came to accuse.
This is the rascal. This is he I spoke of.
Why, thou unreverend and unhallowed friar, 'tis not enough thou hast suborned these women to accuse this worthy man, but in the foul mouth, and in the witness of his proper ear, to call him villain, and then to glance from him to the Duke himself, to tax him with injustice. Let him hence to the rack with him. We'll touse you, joint by joint, but we will know his purpose. What, unjust?
Be not so hot. The Duke dare no more stretch this finger of mine than he dare rack his own. His subject am I not, nor he a provincial. My business in this state made me a looker-on here in Vienna, where I have seen corruption boil and bubble till it o'errun the stew. Laws for all faults, but faults so countenanced that the strong statutes stand like the forfeits in a barber's shop, as much in mock as in mark.
Slander to the stage, away with him to prison.
What can you vouch against him, Signor Lucio? Is this the man that you did tell us of?
'Tis he, my lord. Come hither, good man. Baldpate, do you know me?
I remember you, sir, by the sound of your voice. I met you in prison. Yes.
Oh, did you so? And do you remember what you said of the Duke?
Most notably, sir.
Do you so, sir? And was the Duke a fleshmonger, a fool, and a coward, as you then reported him to be?
You must, sir, change persons with me ere you make that my report. You indeed spoke so of him, and much more, much worse.
Oh, the damn old fellow. Did not I pluck thee by the nose for thy speeches.
I protest I love the Duke as I love myself.
Hark, how the villain would close now after his treasonable abuses.
Such a fellow is not to be talked withal. Away with him to prison. Where is the provost? Away with him to prison. Lay bolts enough upon him. Let him speak no more. Away with these giglets too, and with the other confederate companion.
Stay, sir, stay a while.
What? Resists he? Help him, Lucio.
Come, sir. Come, sir. Come, sir. Oh, sir. Why, you bald-pated, lying rascal, you must be hooded, must you? You show your visage with a hot steed. Show your sheep-biting face and be hanged an hour. Will not off?
Thou art the first knave that e'er made us to do. First, provost, let me veil be gentle free. Sneak that away, sir, for the friar and you must have a word anon. Lay hold on him.
This may prove worse than hanging.
You have spoke, I pardon. Sit you down. We'll borrow place with him. Sir, by your leave. Hast thou a word, or wit, or impudence, that yet can do thee office? If thou hast, rely upon it till my tale be heard, and hold no longer out.
Oh, my dread lord, I should be guiltier than my guiltiness to think I can be undiscernible. I perceive your grace, thy power divine, thy power divine. I've looked upon my passes, then, good prince, no longer session hold upon my shame, and let my trial be mine own confession. Immediate sentence then, and secret death, is all the grace I beg.
Come hither, Mariana. Say, wast thou e'er contracted to this woman?
I was, my lord.
Go take her hence, and marry her instantly. Do you the office, friar, which consummate, return him here again. Go with him, provost.
My lord, I'm more amazed at his dishonor than at the strangeness of it.
Come hither, Isabel. Your friar is now your prince. As I was then, advertising him wholly to your business, not changing heart with habit, I am still attorney at your service.
Oh, give me pardon, that I, your vassal, have employed and pained your unknown sovereignty.
You are pardoned, Isabel. And now, dear, may you is free to us. Your brother's death, I know, sits at your heart. And you may marvel why I obscured myself, laboring to save his life, but I'd rather make rash punishments monstrous of my power than let him so be lost. Almost I made. It was a swift celery of his death, which I did think slow or quick came on. That drained my purpose, peace be with him. The life is better life, past fear and death, and which lives to fear. Make it your compass. So happy is your brother.
I do, my lord.
For this new man we can approaching here, whose soul's imagination is yet transformed. Your well-defended honor you must pardon for Mariana's sake. But as he judges your brother being criminal in double violation of sacred chastity and of promise breach, you are undefended for your brother's life, the very mercy of the law cries out, most audible, even from his proper tongue.
An angel for Claudio, death for death. Haste still pays the rule. Haste still pays haste. And leisure answers leisure. Like the quick light, like the quick light. And measure was still for measure. An angel thy force thus manifested, which though thou wouldst deny, denies thee vantage. We do condemn thee to thy very block, where Claudio stood to death, and with like haste. Away with it.
Oh, my most gracious Lord, I hope you will not mock me with a husband.
It is your husband mocked you with a husband. Consenting to the safeguard of your honor, I thought your marriage fit. And the imputation for that he knew you might reproach your life and choke your good to come. For his possessions, although by confiscation they are ours, we do state and widow you withal, to buy you a better husband.
Oh, my dear Lord, I crave no other, nor no better man.
Never crave him. We are definitive.
Gentle, my liege.
Where are we?
432, the Duke's speech.
I'm so upset that she married. You do but lose your labor. Away with him to death. Now, sir, to you.
Oh, my good Lord, sweet Isabel, take my part. Lend me your needs, and all my life to come I'll lend you all my life to do you service.
Against all sense you do importune her. Should she kneel down in mercy of this fact, her brother's ghost his paved bed would break, and take her hence in horror.
Isabel, sweet Isabel, do you but kneel by me, hold up your hands, say nothing. I'll speak all. They say this men are molded out of faults. For most become much more than better. The better a little, for being a little bad. So may my husband. Oh, Isabel, will you not lend a knee?
He dies for Claudio's death.
Most bounteous sir, look, if it please you, on this man condemned, as if my brother lived. I partly think the Duke's sincerity governed his deeds. Still he did look on me. Since it is so, let him not die. My brother but had justice, in that he did the thing for which he died. For Angelo, his act did not overtake his bad intent. It must be buried but as an intent. That perished by the way. Thoughts are no subjects, intents but merely thoughts.
Merely, my Lord.
Your suit's unprofitable. Stand up, I say. I have bethought me of another fault. Provost, how came it Claudio was beheaded at an unusual hour?
It was commanded so.
Had you a special warrant for the deed?
No, my good lord, it was by private message.
For which I do discharge you of your office. Give up your keys.
Pardon me, noble lord, I thought it was a fault, but knew it not, yet did repent me, after more advice, for testimony whereof, one in the prison, that should by private order else have died, I have reserved alive.
What's he?
His name is Arda.
I would thou hadst done so by Claudio, who will fetch him hither. Let me look upon him.
I am sorry, one so learned and so wise as you, Lord Angelo, and still appear should slip so grossly, both in their heat of blood and lack of temporal judgment afterward.
I am sorry that such sorrow I procure, so deep sticks it in my penitent heart, that I crave death more willingly than mercy. This my deserving, and I do entreat it.
Which is that Barnardy?
My lord.
There was a friar told me of this man, Sirrah. Thou art said to have a stubborn soul, that apprehends no further than this world. thou squarest thy life accordingly, thou art condemned. But for those earthly faults, I quit them all, and pray thee take this mercy to provide for better times to come. Friar, advise him. I leave him to your hand. What muffled fellow's that?
This is another prisoner that I saved, who should have died when Claudio lost his head, as like almost to Claudio as himself.
If he be like your brother, for his sake is he pardoned, and for your lovely sake, give me your hand, and say you will be mine. He is my brother too, but fitter time for that. By this Lord Angelo perceives he's safe. Methinks I see a quickening in his eye. Well, Angelo, your evil quits you well. Look that you love your wife, her worth yours. I find an apt remission in myself, and yet here's one in place I cannot pardon. You, Sirrah, that knew me for a fool, a coward, one all of a luxury, an ass, a madman, wherein have I so deserved of you that you extol me thus?
Faith, my lord, I spoke it, but according to the trick. If you will hang me for it, you may, but I had rather it would please you I might be whipped.
Whipped first, sir, and hanged after. Proclaim it, provost. Round about the city, if any woman wronged by this lewd fellow, as I have heard him swear himself, there's one whom he begot with child, let her appear, and he shall marry her. The nuptial finished, let him be whipped and hanged.
I beseech your highness, do not marry me to a whore. Your highness said even now. Your highness said even now. I made you a duke. Good my lord, do not recompense me in making me couple.
I, my honor, thou shalt marry her. Thy slanders I forgive, and wherewithal remit thy other faults. Take him to prison, see our pleasure here and execute it.
May upon my lord, distressing to death, whipping and hanging.
Slandering a prince deserves it. If she, Claudio, that you wronged, will you restore? Joy to you, Mariana. Love her, Angelo. I have confessed her, and I know her virtue. Thanks, good friend Aeschylus, for thy much goodness. There's more behind that is more gratuitous. Thanks, Provost, for thy care and secrecy. He shall employ thee in a worthier place. Forgive him, Angelo, that brought you home, the head of Ragusine for Claudio's. If the offense pardons itself. Dear Isabel, I have a motion. Much imports your good, whereto, if you are willing ear incline. What's mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. So bring us to our palace, where we'll show what's yet behind that's meet you all should know.
Yes.
Yeah, and the Leos always get the last word. How does that work out that way? This act doesn't have a lot of difficult language in it. It doesn't have all kinds of mythological allusions or things like that. So consequently, there's not a lot of running commentary of that kind.
Can we close the door?
Okay. There are not a lot of little vignettes to go into, but as it has proved with this play, there is a lot of things to discuss in terms of the theme for this whole series of talks, love and the law. And so it's going to be packed with that kind of information tonight. Now, as most of you guys know, I have some unusual friends and associates, and some of them have difficulty keeping it all together psychologically. In interactions with some of them, there's a considerable amount of delusion. One particular fellow is highly delusional. Usually, delusion is self-protection or grave feelings of inadequacy. A person thinks they aren't worth something, come out with all kinds of grandiose delusions so that it seems like they are worth something. In carefully noting those kinds of conversations, the fact is that though they may be delusional, people like that don't lie. They seem to be incapable of it. I don't want to imply that there aren't such things as pathological liars, because that would be untrue. All that I'm saying is that many have neither the will nor the capacity to lie, especially if you address them directly. Now this is ironic. I find this highly ironic because when somebody is trying to disarm or dismiss or discredit somebody else, somebody that's an adversary or somebody that's a witness or something like that, it's happening right now in the Kobe Bryant trial, the first thing that they do is they accuse them of being psychologically troubled. Angelo does it, and when the Duke is feigning that he doesn't know what's going on, he does it. He follows suit. We hear this quite frequently in conversations. If we don't want to deal with somebody's position, we say they're crazy, something like that. The object of doing this is to render the person completely incapable of credibility, so that everything that they say is going to be disregarded, rather than listening to the words for themselves and what they really have to offer. This is actually the opposite strategy of what takes place in something like a political debate. In a political debate, a politician will show how worthy or say how worthy the adversary is, and then try to cut apart his argument. The irony lies in the fact that they're probably accusing someone of truth by saying they're crazy. This is a very difficult issue to discuss, because there are different kinds of truth and there are different kinds of lies. If we take an individual in a very large psycho-spiritual sense, everyone is telling the truth all of the time, even when they're lying. It's very much like Ralph Waldo Emerson says, what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. We are what we are. And we are what we are, and we're being that in an active sense all the time. That is true. If someone is lying or dissembling, they're still themselves. And that's a fact. Now, if someone can see through the surface and see the whole truth, the lie can be seen. But that's a very big if. One can be wrong about the impersonal, objective facts of the external world, whether one is troubled or one is sane. I hate to say that because there are few, if maybe any, that are completely sane. But being wrong isn't lying. It can be an honest mistake or it can be ignorance. One can lie about objective, impersonal facts in the external world, even if one knows them. Politicians do it, and they do it for selfish ends, because the truth doesn't suit their philosophy. For example, the environmental data about what's taking place in Alaska is a very good example. If a person is troubled and delusional about the facts of the external world, it is not exactly for a selfish end. It is more likely that it is a drastic attempt to cover for gross inadequacy. Gross inadequacy with regard to the external world, because such an individual is usually quite withdrawn. You go into the psychopathology of delusional people, they're usually strongly split individuals, very much withdrawn. Knowledge and lies about oneself to oneself are much more tricky, much more subjective. Most of us consciously or unconsciously lie to ourselves. I did it for years about symptoms of a serious illness that I had that I didn't want to admit to myself. This is a very complex subject, something so difficult that we're going to bypass most of it, we're going to miss it, and only just say a few things. Speaking of severe cases, such as insanity, psychiatrists, psychologists, such as Carl Jung, for example, differentiate between insanity and criminal insanity. From what I can tell, what happens in the psyche is about the same in both cases. The soul is split or stretched or something in both cases. But in the latter case, the case of criminal insanity, there's also a taste of evil or a tendency to want to do evil. We're not going to address the interesting question of whether all psychological problems have their root in some kind of immorality or wrongdoing, if not evil. That's an interesting question, but we're not going to go into that. In the case where one is criminally insane, there is indeed a lot of lying about self and about the world, and such a person isn't incapable of the lies that we talked about at the beginning of this. This may be because the internal division is so radical that either focus has to have its own way. Probably humility and open honesty, where the spirit can penetrate right through the personality and it's unobstructed and the entire character is unified, is the only complete sanity that there is. One would have to be permanently and thoroughly enlightened and carry it all the way out into every part of the personality. So only the truly enlightened are sane. Children in whom the internal division has not developed are pretty close to being perfectly sane. And some of the people who are psychologically troubled, but not criminally so, have something like it. They have it's like looking at something with a broken mirror. But because of the internal rupture, there is a broken consistency. Now, all of this is just a little sidetrack to go into the whole idea just because it came up in the theme, and I think it's something we all need to be cognizant of. About the irony of trying to discredit the veracity of someone by name-calling, by saying that they're mentally troubled. Not a way to go. At line 48 in this scene, Isabella hints at a social definition of madness, for which we have insufficient time. In the dialogue that follows between her and the Duke, the definition of sanity as reason is well developed. There's a lot of misconception about this, which we have little time to go into, but we will a little bit. Often we confuse cunning with reason. There are unbalanced or unstable people working almost exclusively from the lower nature, and they do it with extraordinary cunning, and they are taken for sane. There are people who apply reason to some facets of their life, but not to others, who then have partial sanity. Sounds like most of us. Associated with sanity does not mean that engineers or scientists, though they may think so, are any more sane than others. What they're doing could be just a mental habit and an escape from full sanity. What is meant by associating reason with sanity is that the thinker, the self, which is a divinely conceived idea of God, is applying itself and bringing itself all the way through to the personality with unified consistency. When the thinker is thinking and carrying out those thoughts with full deliberation, that is sanity. Moreover, in doing so, it is receiving and experiencing and expressing intuition. And the truth and true objectivity is then reflected in the without as it comes through from intuitions brought through to the without by the thought process. Sanity as reason is not a technical matter. It can be experienced in very unorthodox or informal ways of thinking, as long as the spirit is intuiting and carrying out those intuitions all the way through in a unified character. That is sanity. In the line on page 88, between lines 67 and 68, there is an indication that the Duke knows sanity while shooting holes in the social definition of sanity. I should maybe mention the social definition of sanity. Social definition of sanity is when you see things the same way society sees them, whether society is guilty of superstition or not. In the following exchanges, after lines 67 and 68, the character of Lucio is developed. At line 74, he just blurts out and he interrupts everything. At line 78, he's irrepressible and shows no discipline from himself or from others. He's arrogant. He's too good for discipline. He's really a cheeky guy. We're going to come back to him later on, but it's just in passing. This is running commentary. The Duke's speech at line 104 is very interesting because it touches on the kind of thing we're trying to get into. The truth is now. The truth is now and forever. The truth is eternal in the now. Reason is of the past. As we have just seen, ideas or thoughts wrap around intuitions of truth, that eternal truth. The intuition is now. The thoughts are later. We have all, from time to time, been fortunate enough to experience the truth. And then later on, the reason comes to us. It's exactly the way Plato says that thinking goes. You don't think to a conclusion. That's the way Aristotle tried to do it. You have the conclusion and you think back to the intuition that was there in the first time. Sometimes we have to think about something a long time, or we have to study something, or we have to examine a lot of facts. And when we examine a lot of facts for a long time, eventually the light does dawn on us. The facts may have been present for a long time. The truth is eternally present. Our thinking may have gone on a long time, but the truth is both immanent and not immanent, or alive in our thought. Intuition must be born. It must come to life. It has to live, and it has to be reborn, or there is no truth. Science, culture, history, knowledge, and the law of society, which is the subject of this, one of the subjects of this drama, are all accumulations of intuitive experiences. But they aren't the truth. At least they're not the living truth. They're sort of like the shells that have been left behind. So when the Duke refers to the integrity of Angelo, he's referring to his track record, which is like referring to history or referring to culture. Oh, he's always been right in the past. Yes, probably water will boil at the same temperature and pressure tomorrow as it did today. But that's more because of the ever-presence of the truth than it is because of science. In human behavior, a track record may or may not be an indicator of the presence of truth. In Angelo, it certainly wasn't an indicator. I came to a realization of this in a most embarrassing way. As you know, I have that penchant for trying to live out the truth of the creative stuff. And at one time I broke a long period of celibacy. And I don't know whether it was from freedom or whether it was from enslavement to desire or whether it was a mixture of both. But I did that. In the eyes of the world, everybody thought I was still celibate. They were living by my track record. Obviously, in the eyes of my new partner, I was not. She was probably closest to the truth. In my own eyes, I was confused. I was actually foolish enough at that time to wonder how long I would have to be continent before I would be celibate again. I was thinking in terms of time, as though number of days or years or lifetimes is the way that you determine celibacy. That's track record. That's history. It's how the Duke is apparently putting forth the virtue of Angelo on the basis of track record. In reality, celibacy or chastity are eternal matters. One lives in a present purity, in a present kind of chaste consciousness, or one does not. It's not a matter of track record. It's not a matter of time. Only when we live in that perfectly, in that moment, are we living that way. In science, the way science is conducted, track record is more likely to be reliable. But in relying on it, we're still living in the past. If we rely on custom, if we rely on history, we're still relying on the past. In human behavior, track record is a much more iffy matter. It's not so reliable. And human law, the law we govern ourselves by, is equally iffy. The whole idea that jurisprudence is based on precedent, scary to someone of our temperament. We're mystics. We want to live in the truth right now. So the law, just like reason, is of the past. If the law or reason or interpretation of the law is born anew in intuition, it has a fiery life to it, it's free. If not, if intuition is not present, doubt has to take its place. But even that is better than relying on precedent. Things have to be rethought in the hope that we can get some new insight into them. There has to be an interplay between law or reason or habit and intuition for optimal living. Because intuition is not enough by itself alone. It has to be carried out through reason. The law or reason is in no way diminished by intuitive check. It's only enhanced. If someone is justly saved, certainly that's an enhancement. In the inverse, intuition is not diminished by reason or even doubt, as long as it isn't closed-minded. It too is enhanced in the creation that comes out of the check of intuition. So even in the feigned shock of the Duke, he's showing that the past, the track record, the appearances for what they are in relation to the truth. If we move on to page 96, and the passage beginning at line 306, this whole matter comes to fuller ripeness. Aeschylus, who is a good man and who has promised fairness, believes Angelo. and he even believes Lucio more than he believes the friars or than he believes the women. Women are never believed. I think all women are under Cassandra. I think that they're just never trusted. This is one of the problems. When a track record is established, or there is precedent, or somebody has a good reputation, or if something is seen as cultural, which is to say that it's dead, the more it is believed and the more it is assumed to be true. We've all heard things like, well, it's tradition, it's our heritage, it's always been this way, he's always been a good guy. We've all heard things like that. This is a very difficult problem because history and track record is built up from facts. It's difficult because with things as they are now, we need to trust science because we don't live in perpetual intuition. We have to trust something or another. We do need to be educated, and we do need cultural refinement to come to our best. But we don't need indoctrination, and we don't need bias. So in all of these things, there has to be this interplay between intuition and reason, or between life and form. It's not going to get any easier by itself because the effect of evolution is cumulative. The further we go on, the more we experience, the greater the residue of fact that we have. This is why spiritual exercises are so important, provided that they don't become a new acculturation. Their effect is to establish a better balance between the living intuition and the outward experience and the knowledge of the outward experience. Moving on to another topic, it's interesting to note as a sidelight how Shakespeare shows the willingness of people to resort to torture, to the rack. The nobles in this play and the nobles that were in the audience that saw this play when Shakespeare's company put it on must surely have flinched at seeing themselves in that kind of a situation. This is a night of confession. In fact, there will be several slavish confessions by me. It has nothing to do with reality. It's only a way of maintaining communication with you. As you know, I have some peculiar likes and dislikes. And one of the most peculiar things about them is that I don't know why I like or dislike some people. Some of the people I like, I actually find when I examine them intellectually, I find them objectionable. In these cases, the affinity or the disaffinity is probably something invisible. It's on the desire world level. Something in my desire body resonates sympathetically or antipathetically with those individuals. Being a sinner saint, there's often an affinity that I have with other sinner saints. One of the sinner saints that I like, probably because I haven't met him, is a preacher called Jimmy Swaggart. And Jimmy Swaggart is a cousin of Jerry Lee Lewis, and he has some of the same tastes in women that Jerry Lee Lewis has, especially if they're hookers. So one day he preaches hellfire for sinners, and the next day he might be soliciting prostitutes. He was caught at it twice a few years ago, and he's been very quiet since then. He lost just about his entire tele-evangelistic empire. Now, it's easy to say something like this is hypocrisy. It is, if you look at it factually. It's more than that, and it illustrates a spiritual principle. Oh, here comes my gigantic alibi. The principle is that if one takes an emotional or feelingful path to spiritual attainment, one had better be ready for anything. For centuries there have been reports of highly sexed and highly spiritually charismatic priests. When the desire body drives the life force, kundalini, or the libido, or whatever you want to call it, the spinal fluid, when the desire body drives it, one can make advances rapidly. However, the desire body is also likely to try to take autonomous control, and it revels in extreme desire, and in many, the most extreme desire is sexual lust. Now, Angelo is not a perfect representation of a sinner saint. He's much too mental too much of the time, but he's enough in that direction that his character is like a true character. It's consistent with behavior that we can find. This is a psychology that is a true psychology. The sinner saint is psychologically consistent throughout. You look at the speech on line 369. It's perfectly consistent with the sinner saint. He asks, upon discovery of his guilt, he asks to be executed immediately. Since this person lives in feeling, and the feeling is aligned with the most intense part of our being, the creative quotient that we have in this life, or the creative quotient that we have in this life, guilt and remorse are felt just as keenly as lust and desire are felt. It's not just fine-sounding word. It's not just theatrics when Angelo requests death. He means it. I tell you that. Having enough of the sinner saint, I know that kind of thing is true. Well, this is a evening for even more confession. And I'll do it shamelessly and I'll do it slavishly. As you all know, I have done a lot of dietary experimentation. And a lot of that dietary experimentation hasn't all been scientific. It has also been driven by the desire body, and I have been an extremist in it in true sinner saint style. I fasted long, and I fasted often. I've eaten an entire pizza with 10 heads of garlic ground onto it. And I've consumed a quarter pound of chocolate at one time. probably more of a struggle with desire than it is experimentation. And I don't want to hurt anyone, so I take everything out on myself. And I'm probably what, in some ways, Freud would call in his typology an oral sadistic, an oral autosadistic. But in all of this, I've learned things. There is an occult principle that states the truth that whatever happens on any plane of existence affects every other plane of existence. Thank God most of what is happening on the higher planes. From this struggle, I have learned that various foods have various effects on the vehicles of consciousness that we have, and consequently on our consciousness and behavior. For example, I've learned that the effect of eating sugar, especially refined sugar, seems to be that it really revs the desire body. But in that effect, it's not as strong and it's definitely not as long-lasting as when one consumes a lot of table salt, sodium chloride. Max Heindel, for example, has said that there's a connection between salt and lust, and that extremes of both, especially the lust, results in idiocy. Because when one turns the sexual force down so much in lust, there isn't enough to develop the mind in the next life. It's also true to others. I've had a number of friends that have worked at Central Colony and in other places where they specialize in working with retarded individuals. And these friends have always related to me that without exception, among the children, as they call them, no matter what their age, they call them children, because they really are, there is an excessive fondness for salt and an excess of masturbation. So when the Duke refers to Angelo as having a salt imagination, it shows that Shakespeare is correct again. He really knows what's going on, and he really gets at the facts of things. This is something also that is mildly practical. It's not taken to extreme. You can't do without salt. Let's turn for a moment to the character of the Duke and some other principles. The magnificent character of the Duke is truly a tribute to the magnificent spiritual growth of Shakespeare. Shakespeare, as we have demonstrated in a few cases and could demonstrate in many more, was a Freemason. He was a child of fire, a descendant of Cain, speaking metaphorically. As such, he was a staunch believer in the separation of church and state. In the plays on the War of Roses, he demonstrates this very clearly, especially if you can read between the lines. This is a subject way too large to go into again, but we'll just get at one or two little points. A couple of years ago, when we went to see Richard II, I had intestinal flu that day and couldn't go. We saw something else. In that play, Richard II was portrayed true to history and a little more. He was a king who would be a priest. but a priest who would be weak and sickly in his piety. The War of Roses, in that war, in the plays, Richard II, the sixth part of the two parts of Henry IV, Henry V, and the three parts of Henry VI and Richard III, Shakespeare clearly comes down on the side of the Red Roses, Plantagenets, which, if you're familiar with historical data, the name Plantagenet itself has a lot of Freemasonic meaning. He comes down on the side of separation of state from church. This play, Measure for Measure, was written about 9 or 10 years later. In that 9 or 10 years, Shakespeare had grown quite enough so that he could accept a union of head and heart, a union of fire and water, of Freemasonry and Catholicism, and to some extent even a union of church and state in a higher way. He's not suggesting something like a horrible theocracy as of old, or like Iran under Khomeini. He's suggesting a wisdom that is born of the healthy union of head and heart. The Duke in this play is an example of that union. And it is almost the consummate wisdom that the Duke has. So we're going to come back to the character of the Duke several times. The place of role switching is more than a theatrical device. It's a way to indicate the interblending and the union of church and state. After this play, after Measure for Measure, like the three parts of Henry VI were very early, and there's all kinds of Freemasonry in the dialogue of that. Even keywords and code words, I don't know if they're handshakes and everything, but the whole business is there. But after this play, there is union of head and heart. And it goes so far that there is even a union of comedy and tragedy. Because after this play, not all of the plays, but after this is when the tragicomedies begin to appear. So it shows a great growth on the part of Shakespeare. Now, one example of this wisdom of the Duke is shown in the all too brief of a handling of Bernardin or Bernardine. If you remember from last time in Act 4, Bernardine refused to be executed because he was sleeping off a hangover. That's a really strong character. And base as it was, the strength of that character must have made an impression on the Duke. If we look in Western history, St. Paul was similarly a strong character. He began as a persecutor and murderer of Christians before his conversion. He was, and he says he was, chosen because of that strength and because of that determination. In fact, he survived a stoning and a few beatings. So apparently the Duke is a shrewd understander of human character. And he sees something similar in Bernardine, and he suggests that when he pardons him along line 482. Too bad there wasn't time in the play to develop it, but the play can only be a little hunk out of what goes on. just as a side thought, this is also worth mentioning, that as a fireling or as a child of Cain, this is a perfectly acceptable and frequently occurring thing. The Knights Templars, who were also children of fire, were very successful in redeeming criminals taken right off the street. I've seen it myself in right before my eyes, and really raised my opinion of things. My natural father used to be, for a while, not a bad man, but he was he liked to hang around the bars a lot, and he went through Freemasonry, and his character was completely reformed. It was really quite something to see. In comparison, this brings us to another character, Lucio. He's certainly a mercurial character. He's glib, he's quick, he's verbal. He's probably something like a Gemini character because he turns things around to his advantage and takes opposite sides with quick-wittedness. He's not doing it as an unconscious psychic activity as a Cancer would do it, or a Pisces would. He's doing it by clever intention. He's really cheeky, and he's irrepressible. He's impertinent. He will say anything to anyone. He's unfazed about sassing either the priest or the duke in any kind of circumstances. He speaks out even when his life is in danger. Now, some people try to associate astrological elements with the medieval personality types. I find that to be only modestly successful. But in that kind of cross-comparison, the Aries signs are associated with the sanguine, or the bloody temperament. So in this hypothetical case, it certainly seems to work. Now, even though he is rash and he's fearless, he's really not strong in the way that Bernardine is. Bernardine is difficult to untrack. Lucio is not constant in anything except in his pragmatic and quick switches. He does everything to advantage. So he's not really strong. But he's interesting to us for another reason. In the past, we have spoken of sex and violence as being the first and second sins. Sins of Adam and the sins of Cain. We did that when we were trying to probe why sex was a capital crime. We saw in that talk, or we can see it in nature, that turning the creative force downward and outward, and doing so without harmony, led to cosmic discord, and eventually even to discord in our physical bodies. And it is the source of all of the illness and suffering that we have now. The selfish sexual expression in either sex or in magic or something like that has caused all the suffering. When we continued this behavior, we became attached to and identified with the dense physical body. And we lost more and more of the inner things, and when we became attached to the dense physical body, we became more aware of its depth. we mentioned that in this regard that it was capital as well, because we lose our heads by the redirection of blood in sexuality. We mentioned that destructive black magic that could result in the loss of spiritual selfhood permanently, a more serious death, or the death of the soul, would be the result if we continued with magical activity. Now, Lucio represents a different side of the matter. As we have been looking at it, sex in the Old Testament is a sin against the Holy Ghost. That is unwise use of sex. In the New Testament, most notably in St. Matthew's Gospel, Christ gives a different definition of a sin against the Holy Ghost. Christ's definition is focused at the other end of the spine, in the power of the creative word. It is said openly and clearly that lying is a sin against the Holy Ghost. The destruction of lying is much subtler. But what it does, it doesn't just destroy physical bodies. It destroys thought forms and every embodiment of the living truth. Now, it's true that magic works with words and incantations and curses, things like that. However, lying, while not so apparently violent, is also destructive, and it's subtle in its own way. Obviously, the most destructive kind of lying, when the intent is to harm or to break down someone else's life, is slander. Lucio intends to make the Duke or the friar look bad. Some of it is idle and wanton, and some of it is to give himself a position of advantage. But all of it is destructive. It's intellectual violence. So in this matter, the play is technically correct. The Bible is explicit about sins of the Holy Ghost being unforgivable, that they have to be worked out and they have to be expiated. I'm not sure that I agree with that statement. I agree with everything in the Bible. But as far as I can tell, the reason this is so is because sins against the Holy Spirit involve the very core of creative energy, and not just a general vital energy or kinetic energy that's available to us, but it involves the core, the most sacred energy that we have. So the Duke can and does forgive Lucio, but the slander will have to be expiated in some other way. It will have to be carried out by destiny at another time. What is interesting is how the Duke corrects Lucio. He corrects him by making him keep his word. This isn't just to marry him off, it's to make him carry out his word. And that is like a follow-through. So, wisdom, when it is applied to cause and consequence, or to destiny, it's like poetic justice. The correction of Angelo is similar, so let's turn back to Angelo for a few moments. We're halfway through the notes by now. No, we're more than that. Angelo is obviously the center and the object of the play. While the Duke is important, he doesn't want to be the center of attention. In the Bible passage that speaks about measure for measure, there are several of them, but in all of them, it follows after the statement, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." Reading the Bible and hearing it from people, one feels that that statement is a command or an imperative to not judge. With relation to that, I'm a lot like Lucio. I want to say what I want to say, and I want to make my own determination, and I want to make my own correction, and I have difficulty with that. I have never felt comfortable with the statement, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," as an imperative. On the other hand, I have no doubt whatsoever that you will be judged according to your judgment. No doubt. But with regard to that, I would respond with a question. What's wrong with that? I judge. I try not to be harshly judgmental. I try not to be condemnatory. Each and every time that I have judged, it has come back to me just as the Bible passage said it would. But these passages are not imperatives. They're statements of fact. Just like the so-called curse of Jehovah when Adam and Eve are thrown out of the Garden of Eden. That's looked at as a curse. It's just a statement of fact. When judgment comes back, when it returns, it's always good, whether it's pleasant or whether it's unpleasant. This is the birth of knowledge, very objective knowledge. Judgment, if we look at it this way, is like it served the purpose of a tentative hypothesis, such as we use in the scientific method. It gives us a marking point, a stake. And from that we can orient our experiences and actions, and we can get objective knowledge. If one acts pointlessly, or if one acts in a way that some would call randomness, there is no bridge out into the air so that one can relate the causes and consequences. We'll learn, but we won't learn very efficiently. If you look at most of the trying moral circumstances in life, we don't always know what is the right thing to do. We don't always have continuous intuition. And we don't have knowledge in a lot of cases. If we make a deliberate stand to the best of our knowledge, which is what judgment is in this way, when the consequences come in, we will see things in terms of that deliberation. And that is very clear determination of where and how we were right or wrong. Without that stand, or if we're wishy-washy or random, it's much more if we cling dogmatically to a stand that can blind us to a correct determination, but that's a different issue. Angelo has judged, and he has judged with condemnation. However, after reading the play, I don't believe that there's a single one of us in this room that doesn't think he is the better human being. He's the better for what he has done. He's learned compassion. He's learned the ins and outs of the issue. And he has learned the right and wrong application of judgment. That's all knowledge. Very objective knowledge. And the more deliberate, the better the knowledge. Yes.
I got the impression that he got trapped into the truth. I didn't feel like he was dispensing justice.
Oh, well, when he, Angelo had originally condemned him to death in the early part of the play.
I think in the case of Mariana.
No. No, he had originally promised her. And the man that he condemned to death didn't marry his girlfriend for exactly the same reason. They were waiting for dowry to rape her. And Angelo was literally condemning the man for the same thing that he had done with Mariana. But his real condemnatory judgment was the order of death. And even when he promised not to do so. All right. We've been talking about objective knowledge. But knowledge is not wisdom. To understand wisdom, we have to look at Angelo vis-a-vis the Duke. Now, we've mentioned it before. It's worth mentioning again that this play is much more biblical than it seems at first reading. Let's go into that again. There is a passage in the Gospels where Christ tells his disciples he cannot stay with them. With a careful reading of that passage and with some thought, one sees that the implication is that the disciples' growth would be retarded or stunted with Christ's stay. Something like hardening off transplants. They've been growing indoors, something like that. If you leave them out in extreme heat and light, they'll wilt. So you have to shield them from the light a little bit until they've hardened off. So the removal of the light of the disciples is like that same process. In this passage, Christ gives the Comforter in lieu of his presence. The Comforter is the Holy Ghost. It is the human spirit. It is our spiritual self. This passage is saying that Christ, as the universal self, the selfness of all selves, by its experience, brings the consciousness of the individual self, saying that the interplay from becoming of the universal self is what produces or gives birth to the individual self and awareness of the individual self. There would be no birth and no development of the individual self if Christ stayed all the time. In the same way that a 10-year-old have a hard time keeping any self-confidence or any sense of self. They try to play against Michael Jordan in basketball all the time. That kind of thing. Now what we're talking about here is a very huge evolutionary principle. It involves principle of the first shall be last, or he that cometh after me is preferred before me because he was before me. It has to do with the succession in the Western sense, and it is something that corresponds to the Eastern, of the succession of religions, beginning first with the priesthood of Melchizedek, which was a Christ-like religion, which was followed by the religions of Jehovah, the separative religions, which resulted in individuality, and which is succeeded by the religion of the Christ, which is in itself succeeded by the religion of the Father. This is a big principle that we have looked at in other ways. We have little time to look at it now, except to look at some details and how they relate to our topic. If we look at the Duke Friar as representing Christ, and Angelo, the deputy, is representing the disciples, play is consistent and a lot more to be learned from it. At the very outset of the play, the Duke says he's reading for just this very purpose, to give Angelo a chance to test his wings and to apply the stern kind of justice that he knows he's going to apply. As we said just a few minutes ago, the Comforter, the human spirit, the self, is the thinker and is the judge, located in the world of thought. By its very nature, it is suited to law and to knowledge. However, our thoughts are only good in that they are formed or vessels for the truth, which comes from the life spirit, which Christ is the central focus. Not only is the life spirit, the realm of impartible truth, such as when Christ says, I am the truth, it is also the realm of unconditional love. Thus, it is the realm of love wisdom. When the Duke leaves the deputy learns about the law. He learns the hard way by experience, painful experience. Not only because he has sinned, but because by the law one must experience cause and consequence. That's what the whole, in a much larger sense, that's what the whole sin against the Holy Spirit means. It means experiential knowledge. The Holy Spirit does things by instituting causes and consequences. Instead of learning things by wisdom, by whole, by the life spirit. When the Duke returns, the law is fulfilled. And this is what is beautiful about this play. It is fulfilled by wisdom. I love wisdom. Now you could say that Shakespeare was exercising a lot of poetic license or dramatic techniques when Bernardine refuses to die and then suddenly a pirate dies right at that moment and he happens to look a lot like Claudio. You could say that that's awfully convenient. We said it before, when you try to live with the whole, with the one, with that love, those convenient things happen more often. I have to tell you a story that happened on this. The pirate's name is Rogozin, and as I was doing this part of the notes, I had forgotten the name of Rogozin. I reached over and grabbed the book and opened it up exactly to the page, and Rogozin, and it was, like what was inside of me was telling me that what I was the point I was trying to make was true. Now, because of his love, because of his compassion, the Duke is able to requite justice to Angelo, measure for measure, completely within love, completely within grace. That is wisdom. That is exactly as St. Paul says, the end of the law is love. Or it is, as Christ says, I came not to overthrow the law, but to fulfill it. And it's fulfilled by love, and the growth is efficient. Now we still have to look at what is not so perfect about the Duke. Why he kept everyone, even Isabel, in the dark about Claudio, which we thought is, I think, cruel and treatment. Part of the reason is given in Act 4, not this Act, but on 879, line 125. The Duke makes it clear that he's trying to purge her of attachment to her brother, which leads her to wish ill on Angelo for wanting to kill him and to despoil her. The fact that this has been successful in this act shows up on page 99, lines 390 to 402. It turns out that she is not attached. So there is success in both accounts. On page 101, lines 447 to 457, she has grace for Angelo, one account, and she no longer has attachment to her brother, and she can see consequences of his deeds for what they were. Now, part of this use of keeping Isabella and everybody else in the dark was obviously for dramatic purposes to have a super happy ending. But nonetheless, I still couldn't square that with my conscience. It seems like that monstrous thing that was done by Paulina in The Winter's Tale, when she keeps Leontes ignorant of the fact that his wife is alive, and she keeps him ignorant for 12 years. When pondering that monstrosity, it opened the way up to seeing the whole play as an exposition of Eleusinian mystery. Something very funny, something very terrible happened. When thinking on this monstrous action, it opened up to something else. Not as grand as the Eleusinian mystery, but it opened something else. But one of the things that happened is, in the pondering, I think this is the best ideas I've had in years. I pondered things for several days. Notes I've lost. And so we have a very much foreshortened version, and I've just been trying like anything to call it all back. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. And this whole business about getting old, you can think better than you ever could think before. Tough business. Write it down. I still have a feeling of mild outrage. And it goes something like, what right does the Duke have to let Isabel suffer? What right does he have to withhold that kind of important information? And if we ponder something like that, it comes obvious to us with regard to ourselves, what right do any of us have to interfere in anyone else's life? And this brings us right back, judge not, lest you be judged. And it brings us right back to be or to not to be. If we think about it, any action we take is going to affect others. And those effects may be pleasant or unpleasant. And in the short run, those effects may be either beneficial or adverse. One wonders whether any action isn't selfish and separative. The whole principle of cause and consequence is in India called the principle of action. Hamlet ponders whether it is whether to act and suffer the slings of outrageous fortune. Fortune is just another name for cause and consequence. One could just as well ponder in a different way whether this doesn't take us beyond the perspective that goes beyond self. Even though mystics do contemplate self in the sense of higher self, they only seem to make progress when they get beyond self. If we don't act, there is peace. There is no progress. If we do act, there is progress whether or not there is peace. There is progress whether or not what we do is a positive thing. As well as being a spiritual problem, this is a political problem. It is the problem of individual rights and the individual versus collective rights and the collective. This is how the interaction, or one of the ways how the interaction between the human spirit, the self, and the life spirit, which is the ultimate other, the altruistic selfness, works. In the phenomenal realms and phenomenal bodies, it is the struggle between the separative desire body and the peaceful vital body. The political right comes down in favor of individual rights. It comes down in favor of the self. But in its manifest reflection in the desire body, it leads to greed. The political left comes down in favor of the collective right, the altruistic life spirit. But in its manifest reflection, it has to deal with problems of complacency in the vital body and of lack of incentive. Like Hamlet, truly, we must all act. And when we do so, we must do so from ourselves. We can't act from somebody else. However, that need to act does not obviate are acting with an eye to others, to the all, to the collective. In fact, beyond petty selfishness, our actions are usually more successful and more harmonious the more we take the bigger picture into account. The Duke had to be a priest. He had to have a vision that went beyond mere politics. All of this means that not only is judgment beneficial, provided it is not condemnatory, it is necessary and it is mandatory with regard to action. This fact and the fact that there are two kinds of judgment brings up all kinds of questions about law and judgment and the like. A few minutes ago we said, though Angelo was pardoned from human law, he was not pardoned from cause and consequence. We also mentioned the biblical injunction about the need to work out sins against the Holy Ghost. They use the creative force. I reserve judgment on that because it isn't necessarily consistent with the gospel. Mary Magdalene is completely forgiven, and the adulterous woman who would be stoned was Mary Magdalene, was forgiven. So let's look at one of the issues in this, one of the simpler issues, but still very difficult. Why have law at all? What is its purpose? What is the value of it? Some, proudhood and the anarchists, even the modern libertarians, would have no law at all. The purpose of the law is what we have been speaking about. It is a means, a bridge through the air to try to decide between individual rights and the rights of others, or between the individual and society. It's really ironic that we have the law because we are free. If we were divine automatons, there would be no reason to have a law. We would do everything like gears. But because we're divinely free, we have the freedom to rule and govern ourselves. But even though we're free, we're not independent. And this is assumed in self-governance. We couldn't govern ourselves in small or in large unless we held something in common. But in other terms, we couldn't govern ourselves unless we shared the same life spirit. So again, we find ourselves at the great spiritual maxim that all consciousness is born in the interaction between the human spirit, self, and the life spirit, selfness. However, since our fall into matter has been too deep and too selfish, we've lost contact with the inner spiritual world. We're exiled in the material without. In our excessive material orientation, we become blind, savage, free agents were independent. It's ironic again, but in our freedom, we have sold ourselves into slavery, into desire-filled, materialistic slavery. We have made ourselves excessively subject to the principle of cause and consequence in natural law. We try to break natural law. We have little choice about illness. And we've even lost a lot of the grace whereby to do healing. Human law suffers the same kind of inability to balance, and it is subject to the pressures of blind, selfish materialism. As a consequence, many of the issues and questions in this play are like everyday realities. For example, the question arises, as it does in this play, what is too much of a corrective measure and what is too little of a corrective measure? It's not like its balance that we talked about last time, that we can, from without, that we can restore a balance. From this play and from our lives, it's obvious that lechery or any other sin can't be cured from without. It usually requires expiation and suffering for one to wake up until there is an inner vision and the inner freedom is retained or retaken. What we're trying to get at is that the advance of consciousness, harmonious living, that is the purpose of the law, is in many ways an internal matter. It is an internal thing. One would almost think that if we are completely self-governing and have an internal sense of justice and freedom based on intuition, there would be no problem with ad harmony with the external world. That would only be if we grew on the source beyond self. People who act on principle, even high principle, will fight with each other. People who act on love are always right. They always have peace. This isn't some fakey, new agey, gushy kind of love. It's much more strong than that. It seems like a stretch, but being left in the dark, like Isabella is left in the dark, and the Duke being the representative of the light, may be the way it's looking in us. I don't think Shakespeare meant this, but behind the scenes, in areas where we are in the dark, it's working in us in that way that we cannot perceive. That's as far as I could go with the notes. Next time what we'll do is we'll have the theme talk, and we will try to get much more deep in the principle of cause and consequence than on the last theme talk, 7 talks ago, and then we'll move on to here. I'm sure there are no long-winded questions.